Life's end. Isn't it beautiful?
Snake defeated the pain, but not the sorrow, and now he must kill his joy. But not before she can impart her final wisdom upon her protege. It seems the boss shared very little about herself with Snake before this moment, and yet he loved her, idolized her. How could he when he never truly knew her? Is Snake any different from the boss's countless fans and admirers? Or maybe knowing someone isn't merely a case of how much biographical information you have on them. Is it time and proximity? If so, the boss trained Snake. They served in combat together. The bonds forged on the battlefield are beyond comparison. But in the end, Snake only ever knew what the boss let him see. It is only in this, their final moments, that she lets him see the whole picture. Just as with any of her previous appearances throughout the game, there are no superfluous lines of dialogue. The boss is not a woman of many words, but when she uses them, they are honed and refined for maximum impact, not unlike her CQC. It is for this reason, this episode will follow a slightly different structure. Instead of placing the significant lines of dialogue in the intro, we will run through the boss's speech, line by line, in the discussion itself. Because whenever the boss shows up, there is guaranteed to be some heavy info dumping. Let's jump ahead. What ensues is the greatest 10 minutes of their lives, and also the most tragic. Once defeated, the boss hands over the legacy, and the Patriot, as she lays dying in the field of Star of Bethlehem flowers. Though not a native flower of Russia, they are a fitting choice as a symbol of hope, guidance, and new beginnings.
Jack. Or should I say, Snake. You're a wonderful man. Kill me. Kill me now. Do it.
The power is in our hands to pull the trigger, though this narrow power we are granted only determines when we kill the boss, not whether or not we do. In this moment we can either pull the trigger or turn the console off. With the pull of the trigger we are entered once more into non-ordinary reality. The shamanic realm, as if the world itself is mourning the boss's death. A ripple of blood red courses through the white flowers, bearing the stains of what has transpired. Not unlike the red poppies in the battlefield of Flanders, Belgium in World War I. To this day, a symbol of remembrance in Australia. Eva too seems to sense what has happened as she looks up from her preparations in the wig. The skies darken and the boss's horse trots over to grieve his rider. The boss's scar comes to life and transforms into a white snake, slithering away. Finally, in death, she has been freed of this pain that has decorated her flesh for decades.
Ready to go, Snake?
Eva is ready to take off, but Snake stares at the still red petal in his hand as he comes to terms with what he has just done. Once the petal leaves Snake's hand, it resumes its original white coloration. It was as if the grief radiating from Snake had dyed it red. But it's not smooth sailing out of the Soviet Union just yet.
Snake! Ocelot! We're not done yet!
Ocelot launches himself from a flying platform into the wig. He tackles Snake, then tosses Snake's belt with all the gear out of the hatch. The fight that ensues is one in which they mirror each other's moves, demonstrating just how much they've become intertwined. Ocelot assaults Snake up against a wall, so Snake pins Ocelot to the wall and tries to punch him before he's kicked away. Snake tosses Ocelot to the ground and pummels Ocelot's face, so Ocelot rolls on top of Snake to do the same. Snake pulls himself away and they both hop on their feet, anticipating the next move.
Snake, try to remember some of the basics of CQC.
Snake pulls Ocelot into an arm lock, so Ocelot frees himself to do the same to Snake. Snake elbows Ocelot in the face, Ocelot tries to do the same, but Snake catches onto the pattern now and grabs Ocelot's oncoming elbow before tossing him. But a cat always lands on his feet. Anything Snake can do, Ocelot can do better.
I picked up a few new moves. It doesn't feel right to shoot an unarmed man. But I'll get over it.
Eva tosses Snake a revolver identical to Ocelot's. Where did that come from? Snake and Ocelot aim at each other, frantically firing, clicking through empty chamber after empty chamber. Turns out neither gun was loaded. Ocelot pulls out his necklace containing a single bullet. Chekhov's bullet, if you will.
What do you say to one last showdown?
Yeah, alright.
Snake, perhaps realizing he cannot defeat Ocelot in CQC, or perhaps simply indulging his weird fanboy, hands his revolver to Ocelot. Ocelot loads the bullet into one of the revolvers, then proceeds to play a kind of shell game. And then he places the revolvers on the ground, side by side. It's unlikely that either of the men know now where the bullet hides. But that's something we're gonna have to wait to see unfold in the next episode. You are listening to Metal Girl Solid, one woman's journey through a series she knows nothing about. I am your host, Courtney Colson, and this is the penultimate episode of Season 1, Snake Eater. This block runs from hours 8 to 8:30, so we're back to a half-hour block. This is the fourth time. I can't believe I'm here. I'm at the end. Because I had a co-host and he didn't know what the hell he was doing, and it was just, there's way too much information to put into a podcast about Snake Eater without two people having a conversation. So maybe one day those early versions will see the light of day, which is mostly us just bullshitting. I was just hoping that he would give me some guidance, because I didn't know anything about Metal Gear, but no, he just let me talk. And I'll tell you guys, you probably know already, letting me just talk without any kind of direction or restrictions, bad idea. I could talk the paint off a wall. But yeah, I think we went through it 2 or 3 frickin' times. And now, I decided,
fine, I'll do it myself.
And so, took over the reins, took over the show entirely. He basically went, I don't think there's really a place for me in this show anymore, I don't know what I'm doing here. Okay, bye, Felicia. So yeah, I took over and made it a bit more of an essay, a lone voyage quest through the unknown. Yeah, I think it finally came together, and I'm glad it got out into the world finally, and I can share this journey with other people, and the feedback's been great, although mostly people loved the haircut tutorial video I did. That did gangbusters. People loved that. And then I did a uniform video, so people seem to love the video more than just the audio. Like, I put all this effort into all my academic research and my reading, and no, they just want to see me in my cute snake costume, I guess. I don't know. But other than that, yeah, a lot of people are excited to see where this goes and see my reaction to future games. And I'm definitely I'm champing at the bit to finally see Solid Snake, because it's hard to do the research I do for this show without encountering spoilers, and I think I've told you already what my idea of the Solid Snake arc is. If not, I have to see if I can dig it up. It's pretty funny. But I wrote to my former co-host, this is what I think the Solid Snake stories are about. And he went, this is hilarious. This is... Okay, so I guess I'm not anyway close. Which is good. I'm glad to hear that I am still pretty ignorant, even though some people in the comment section have accidentally just dropped some things. And I go, whoa, do you not know the premise of this show? It's that I don't know. I'm not supposed to know. Raiden who? I don't know. Fuck off. I'm a Solid Snake virgin, please. I'm saving myself. Late 2026, hopefully, we're going to be doing Season 2, which is a combination of Peace Walker and Portable Ops, because they're kind of the same game, or one fed into the other, or I don't think I could do a season of just Portable Ops because it's kind of repeating myself for Peace Walker, so I think it's more interesting to compare and contrast the two. But all that housekeeping aside, here is episode 15. It begins with Snake leaving Eva at the lake before he goes to face the boss, and ends with Ocelot and Snake about to face off. Interesting to note, if you don't kill the boss before time is up, you will both be nuked, and it is game over. Or perhaps we could consider this an alternate ending? I think, yeah, if I chose that, just, look, let them die together, and then I'd just turn the console off. I'd be happy with that. The boss talks about absolute enemies, that enemies change with the times, and this, of course, is a theme that will recur throughout the games, or at least the games I've played, Peace Walker especially. They reiterate those ideas quite a lot. Snake is 30 in this. He's like 29 or 30. But he's quite naive. I think I've mentioned that before, and so the fact that the boss is having this conversation of either your enemies change with the time, there's no such thing as an absolute enemy, I mean, it really shouldn't be news to him. He should be aware of this, but he just simply hasn't had to face it before. Then the boss mentions the Nevada atomic testing that she was involved with, and then the Bikini Atoll testing, which is what drew the boss to Snake.
We're both slowly being eaten away by the karma of others.
But Big Boss, I do know this. He lives to be an old man, and he has a full head of hair, so I call bullshit. Apparently, being irradiated is not a huge deal for him. Just his balls took all of the radiation. The rest of his body's fine, it's just his scrotum. Then she talks about going into space for the Mercury program, which is how she gets the nickname the Mercury Lady. And we've gone more into detail about that in previous episodes.
Of course, you won't find any of this in the history books.
Which is likely true for many things in our world. And I can't believe I haven't spoken about this. Or maybe I did in one of those aforementioned earlier drafts of the podcast, but the Judica Cordelia recordings were made by two Italian amateur radio operators back in the 1960s who claimed to have recorded the communications of Soviet cosmonauts. The most famous one is from May 1963 of an unnamed female cosmonaut who perished on re-entry. This would have been a couple of years after Yuri Gagarin's flight. With the declassification of Soviet records, there still has never been any evidence that the female cosmonaut ever existed. But the same might be said about the boss. Maybe any evidence of her flight has been thoroughly erased from the record. It wouldn't be the first time the government or other institutions conveniently lost some of their records. The boss has her epiphany in space, the overview effect, which we mentioned in an earlier episode. It's all coming together here. Now, Ham, the chimpanzee, who lived from July 1957 to January 1983, had a good long life. He was known as Ham the Chimp, and Ham the Astro Chimp was the first great ape launched into space. On January 31st, 1961, Ham flew a suborbital flight on the Mercury Redstone 2 mission, part of the US space program's Project Mercury. So perhaps the boss knew Ham the Chimp. Ham was known as number 65 before he safely returned to Earth. Then he was renamed after an acronym for the laboratory that prepared him for his historic mission, the Hollow Man Aerospace Medical Center, located at the Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. Hollow Man, like the Hollow Man, like the Invisible Man. Interesting. Okay, well, it's not spelt the same. There's no W in it. His name was also in honor of the commander of Holloman Aeromedical Laboratory, Lieutenant Colonel Hamilton Ham Blackshear. His flight was only 16 minutes long, so he couldn't have actually gone up into space, Alan Shepard would reach space in May of that same year, only 4 months after Ham's attempt. Amazingly, Ham lived to the ripe old age of 25 in 1983, as I said, while living out his retirement at the Washington National Zoo.
I could see the planet as it appeared from space. That's when it finally hit me. Space exploration is nothing but another game in the power struggle between the US and the USSR. Politics, economics, the arms race, they're all just arenas for meaningless competition.
And that's a sad truth of the world, that innovation only comes from warfare. Or pornography, actually. That's the other great source of mankind's inspiration. 99.9% of human history was the Stone Age. Our earliest tools were for hunting food or fending off predators or enemies. But in the last 10,000 years or so, we have seen rapid evolution. And how do we mark those changing eras? The Iron Age, the Bronze Age, and so on. It is all defined by the metals. The Metal Gear, if you will. And therefore, weapons that we are able to forge with those metals. And then you get into the last 3 centuries or so. The printing press, photography, home videos, the internet. Those aspects of our culture were in some way facilitated by or invented by the military-industrial complex. But they became as widespread and successful as they were due to the ease of which they allowed civilians to create and share erotic material. And speaking of war, there was the format wars, which happened more than once. VHS defeated Betamax, and Blu-ray defeated HD DVD, largely influenced by the porn industry.
In the 21st century, everyone will be able to see that we are all just inhabitants of a little celestial body called Earth. A world without communism or capitalism, that is the world I wanted to see. But reality continued to betray me.
This is the boss's will, and one that would be devastatingly misinterpreted by Big Boss and Major Tom. The boss's will seems like a simple one, peace. But as we have discussed, and as we will continue to discuss again and again throughout these games, peace is impossible on a grand scale. To quote the sniper from TF2, because at the end of the day, long as there's 2 people left on the planet, someone's gonna want someone dead. Guarantee you'll not go hungry. The boss then speaks of her involvement in the Bay of Pigs incident in Cuba, something that will be referenced again in Peace Walker, so I won't go too much into it. I'll just put the audio here.
In 1961, I was sent to Cuba, to Bahia de Cochinos. It was part of a CIA-sponsored invasion under the guise of taking Cuban exiles back to their country. But the US government betrayed them. Our weak-kneed president held back their air support. Defenseless, the exiles were annihilated by the Cuban army. All I could do was watch in silence. I was set up by the very country I'd sacrificed so much for, by the very government I dedicated my life to defending. I was driven from the surface world, and I went underground.
The boss then talks about having to kill the Sorrow. She refers to him only as a friend and nothing more. Although coming from a woman like the boss, maybe the title of friend is a greater honor than it is coming from us mere mortals. The boss explains that the philosophers began as the Wise Men's Committee, an altruistic alliance between the Allied forces in World War I. One such committee member was the boss's father. By the 1930s, and presumably before the beginning of World War II, all the original members of the committee had died, from what causes we do not know. From then, it became a shell of its former self. This is where the war economy is said to have emerged, at least in the Metal Gear universe. I know there's something called Big Shell in one of the later games, but I don't know what that means. It's a place, maybe? I don't know. War economy is a bit of a misnomer, or perhaps a mistranslation. A war economy in the general sense refers to the economy of a nation anticipating war. This would see the allocation of a nation's funding placed on the manufacture and mobilization for warfare, the military-industrial complex, while other concerns such as education, housing, infrastructure, or even healthcare rank lower in priority. This could see interest rates and taxes increased during these periods. Whereas the war economy in the Metal Gear context means something different. I will quote the Metal Gear wiki here. The war economy, also known as the war industry, that's a better name, was an economical global structure that emerged in the 2010s, turning war into a lucrative business. State economies became solely dependent on war with an immediate need for private military companies. And I mean, war is a lucrative business already. Always was, always will be. There have always been war merchants. As much as I love driving a Saab, I am fully aware that the company primarily profits from manufacturing weapons of warfare. That's all they do now, actually. They don't make vehicles anymore. However, where Metal Gear's war economy differs is that this shows an extreme outcome in which war becomes privatized, which is a terrifying aspect and something we are sure to get into in later games. We're already living in a world where corporations hold far more wealth and power than the governments. And thankfully, most of these billionaires are in the tech or e-commerce sectors, although they may also be funding military enterprises, who can say? As the boss explains it, it's as if the philosophers, following the Second World War and seeing how profitable it was, devise a way to perpetuate conflict for the sake of profit. Which, again, not entirely dissimilar to how war already works. There was no need to add this layer of fiction when it is basically the truth. The United States didn't invade the Middle East to destroy terrorists and their weapons of mass destruction. They went there for oil and to piss off the Soviets, which we will get to in MGSV. Thankfully, they do talk about that. War in the modern age has often been reframed to become more palatable. It is a noble endeavor, protecting our land from the foreign enemy, for freedom or liberty, etc., etc. Back in the day, at least emperors were honest. They were at war to conquer land, steal resources, crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of their women. Fun fact, that quote from Conan the Barbarian actually came from Genghis Khan. And yes, it is, they theorize, supposed to be pronounced Genghis Khan, not Genghis Khan. And I do recommend you listen to the Dan Carlin's Hardcore History about the Mongols. It's fantastic. But that quote originally was, "The greatest happiness is to scatter your enemy, to drive him before you, to see his cities reduced to ashes, and to see those who loved him shrouded in tears, and to gather into your bosom his wives and daughters." It's surprising that while throughout this game series, Kojima is quite direct in his criticisms of real-world governments, particularly the United States, the creation of the philosophers, viewed in this context, seems like a cop-out, pulling his punches. Or perhaps the philosophers are merely a manifestation or a singular personification of what is in reality many disparate, quote-unquote, villains, all profiting from war. This is a video game series after all. We do need a bad guy to go after and thwart and punch in the face. These games get real, but they can't get too real. Although, fucking MGSV, Jesus Christ, it gets very real. It'll give you PTSD. I vaguely recall there was some controversy about the Sons of Liberty. Although I see here that it was released in 2001, so maybe Americans were just being extra sensitive at that time for particular reasons. I don't even need to mention those. Well, actually, it scares me. It makes me feel so old that I talk to some adults. They look like, they're young. They're younger than me. But I'm talking to adult-looking humans, right? And I will mention 9/11, and like, oh yeah, I wasn't born yet. What? Oh my god, what? Okay. Oh, I'm gonna go talk to someone else now. You're making me feel old. Woo. It's like for New Year's, I went to an emo and new metal New Year's Eve. And everyone there looked like a fucking child. They were born after Linkin Park and Limp Bizkit and Korn. They didn't know any... Or maybe it was vintage to them. It was retro. You know, it's like my love of... Now I get it. I'm sorry, I'm going on a tangent here, but I'm feeling this, man. You need to know about it. Like, I grew up loving Duran Duran. I still love Duran Duran. Depeche Mode. I loved a bit of U2. My mum loved U2. Now I'm realizing, oh yeah, it's a bit cringe. I don't know how else to say it. Or humbling maybe. When you have this teenager or 20-something who's really into the music before they were born. And it makes you feel fucking anxious. I didn't realize. They mean well. I'm glad you like Linkin Park. But you were born after Meteora. You weren't even born the year of Hybrid Theory. You were born after Meteora. God. You were born after Minutes to Midnight. Oh, no. By the way, we're only 10 minutes into this block. Aren't you glad the last episode was the hour-long block, not this one? The archival photos of the boss. I wonder if they were 3D models of the character or if they're just illustrations. And if so... Were they drawn that blurry, or are they clearer versions of these images somewhere out there? I'd be curious to know.
I was pregnant at the time. The sorrow was the father. I gave birth on the field of battle. A beautiful baby boy. But my child was snatched away from me by the philosophers.
Now... When I first played this game, I probably had the same thought as everyone else. Hang on. She was at D-Day. She was at Normandy. And she was 9 months pregnant. She was ready to pop. How did no one notice? How did no one stop her? And, well, turns out there are actually many logical reasons why her pregnancy might have been invisible. And there are many stories. I mean, there's a whole reality show called I Didn't Know I Was Pregnant, although most of those cases are young girls, they have had no proper sex ed, and they were quite fat. So they didn't really... They just thought they were putting on weight, because they were always putting on weight. That's kind of a default for them. Big American girls. But no, in the case of the boss, well... According to Dr. Karan of the YouTube channel of the same name, there is a phenomenon known as the retroverted uterus. So most women have an antiverted uterus, whereas the retroverted is tilted towards the spine. Or if she had any scarring in her uterus from endometriosis or surgery, the scar tissue would prevent the ligaments from leaning too far forwards. Or... And this one, I think, is probably the most likely. I mean, she could have had a little bit of all these, but more than likely, simply being tall and having strong abdominal muscles will hold the uterus in place. And of course, as a woman, I find all of this interesting, and it's wonderful to have this character that is this powerful, badass female character. But also, there are these biological aspects, like the birthing a child, pregnancy, all of that. That is an aspect of her life, and how does that play into her career as a soldier? It's a mixed bag of action heroines, female soldier characters, and how they balance motherhood, be that Ripley in Aliens, Sarah Connor in Terminator, and sadly we don't have too many other... It's basically just these two examples for the past 30 years. But I know some women who go, oh, I hate that every single female character, even these action heroes... There has to be maternity and motherhood somewhere in there, because if she doesn't have children, then, what does that say about her? Yeah, no, I can relate to that. But I think when it's done well, like Ripley, like Sarah Connor, like the boss, it is, I hate to use the word empowering, but it is. I think it shows that it's not, oh, once you're pregnant or once you have babies, it's all just infantilization all around you, just 24/7. And also the tragedy of she's suddenly become a mother. She probably didn't even know that she was pregnant, and suddenly, oh, you're giving birth to a baby, and I don't know, you got the cobras around you helping you deliver this baby, you got the fear going, push, push! and then that baby's ripped from her basically immediately. Well, so she has that ridiculous cesarean scar. I know it's meant to resemble a snake, but what the fuck could have caused it? It's clearly not a cesarean scar, although, I mean, if you have the cobras doing surgery on you, anything can happen. But it really does look like... I mean, it's not even... I think there was a suggestion that, she had bullet wounds as well, and so they had to remove those at the same time. No, man. It would have to be some kind of freak accident. Maybe something got hooked into her flesh and it was dragged upwards or downwards. I really cannot think of any reasonable scenario. Having drawn this scar on myself as I cosplay as the boss a few times, I've had a lot of time to think about this and think about any reasonable scenarios where you would create a scar this shape beyond deliberate disfigurement, which technically Snake does in Peace Walker, or it's just a fake scar. I don't know. We'll get into that next season. So other than deliberate disfigurement, torture, mutilation, the scar makes no sense except beyond a symbolic one. And look, I'm not going to complain about things being unrealistic in Metal Gear. I don't want to be one of those nerds. I hate those nerds, actually.
Wondering how he eats and breathes and other science facts. Then repeat to yourself, it's just the show. I should really just relax.
And I mean, the boss seems to be completely truthful in this scene. She wants Snake to know everything. The story behind the scar doesn't make sense, however, this may just be an example of rule of cool. Kojima has to bend reality around this Snake scar that he really, really wanted the boss to have. When I played Snake Eater for the first time, I really did hope that I didn't have to kill the boss. There would be some kind of twist or reveal or something, anything that meant I didn't have to go through with it. I think I found the fight challenging, but not too much of one. The Volgan and Cobra fights could metaphorically have me tearing my hair out. And now I'm going to quote from Hideo Kojima's Creative Gene book, which talks about his inspiration for the boss. And actually, you can hear, I'm actually turning pages. This chapter, or essay, is called The Headstrong Cat Jenny, who greatly influenced my creative work. Jenny, or The Abandoned, written by Paul Gallico. Kojima writes, I was in high school before I understood the difference between dogs and cats. I had never had either as a pet, not because I didn't want one, because my mother had asthma. Then one special cat taught me the difference between cats and dogs. A tabby with slanted eyes and a white chest, from Jenny, a novel by Paul Gallico, published in 1950. The Japanese translation was published by Shinchosa in 1979, the summer of my high school freshman year. I didn't exactly know why I picked up this book when I wasn't a cat lover. Maybe the title reminded me of Jamie Summers from The Bionic Woman. The protagonist is Peter, an 8-year-old in London who adores cats but isn't allowed to have one because his nanny hates them. One day, Peter is struck by an automobile and wakes up as a white-furred cat. Suddenly thrust into the feline world and chased through hostile streets to the brink of starvation and despair, Peter is saved by a homely tabby named Jenny Baldwin. The cat has a surname. Jenny was betrayed by her human owners and abandoned to the hardscrabble existence of a stray cat. She teaches and trains Peter in all of the skills and techniques the former boy needs to live as a masterless cat. How to walk down the road, how to drink milk, how to hunt mice, how to win the favor of humans, how to stow away on a ship, how to twist his body in midair, how to groom and why, and the fighting techniques he needs to challenge the boss cat. While Peter seeks Jenny's help to go from a stranger of feline society to a 100% bona fide cat, the reader keeps turning the pages. Paul Gallico's love for cats shows through his writing. While reading the book, the reader undergoes a transformation alongside Peter. The illusion is so powerful the reader will begin to believe they could talk to these stray cats. By the second half of the book, the reader has practically become a cat themselves, and begins to hold special feelings for the character of Jenny, no matter that she's an animal. Jenny is prideful despite being neither beautiful nor perfect. But any reader, male or female, will have their heart stolen by her willful yet kind presence, just as mine was. Everywhere you go, cats are the cat's pajamas. Bookstores will have a special section featuring cat books. Mahokaru Numata's Nekonari and Heinlein's The Door into Summer seem to be the mainstays. But the cat novel I keep on my bookshelf I never see in any bookstore. Recently, 33 years since the last time I read it, I took Jenny from the shelf and gave it another read. What I found surprised me. Jenny hadn't just influenced my view of women, but my creative work. In Metal Gear Solid 3, the boss confronts the player character, Snake, a stray dog, with a choice. Will you live as a dog, or will you live as a cat? I don't think this is quite translating. Subconsciously, I must have been inspired for her character by Jenny. The Metal Gear Solid series has been the story of patricide committed by mercenaries who belong to an organization, in other words, dogs of war, Diamond Dogs. I created the boss, a mother cat, to bring in the viewpoint of motherhood and stray cats. MGS3 was born from Jenny's meme. Jenny is a lover, a teacher, a rival, a partner, a confidant. The novel is much more than a moral story about a bittersweet first love and loss. It's a story, told from the feminine viewpoint, about the act of living, and it explores an intimate theme: how will I pass on my baton, my memes, to the next generation? Just as every dream has an end, stories must have an ending. So too, do Peter and Jenny part. Depending how the reader interprets the way of this last scene, they will receive the meme in a different way. Jenny was gone, the sweet companion of his adventures. These things he saw and remembered for the last time before they faded away and vanished in their stead, left something that was neither memory nor dream nor fantasy, but only a wonderfully soothing sense of homecoming, well-being, and happiness. A very long time ago, I dreamed that I met a cat. When I awoke, I had returned to being a high school student, and the dream quickly passed from my memory. But as an adult reading Jenny again, I realized that I had never forgotten the experience of that dream, not even for an instant. Now, as always, I carry Jenny's meme inside myself. And so when I declare at the beginning of this essay that I had never had a cat, I was wrong. I had Jenny. He's an odd duck, that Kojima, or odd cat, I should say. He's a very lateral thinker. I mean, there is that language barrier, so the translation might be a factor there, but just the way he looks at life and makes these unexpected connections, and also how deeply he connects with the art he experiences. That is something that, as a creator myself, stories, art, music, they mean so much to me. They're not just something to kill time, or they're not just pleasant things to distract us from the real world. But the way Kojima would read a book about cats and see so much depth in it. Not just, this is a childhood book of mine that I enjoyed, and, it's just about some silly cats, some anthropomorphic animals, whatever. He held on to that. He physically held on to that book. And those memes factored into his art. And so I think for non-creators, they don't get that of, no, when I experience a story or music or a movie, whatever it is, you are taking in this energy, this inspiration. It becomes a part of you, and it will work its way out of you in unexpected ways. Although my first forays into writing lyrics, it just sounds like fucking Linkin Park. I listened to too much Linkin Park. So I don't know how to feel about Kojima's greatest inspiration for the boss was a fucking cat. That's his idea of womanhood. That's his example. I mean, maybe I've not read this book. Maybe it's a very realistically written female character who just happens to be a cat. It's like a metaphor. It's like Animal Farm. For a character that's only in one game, I absolutely believed how important and special the boss was, because she came to take on a similar significance to me as it did for Snake. I never had a good female role model in my life, definitely not my mother, and it caused me to hate my own womanhood. It made me feel like a freak. And despite Kojima having his misogynist streak, The boss is the woman I aspired to be. She is someone I could relate to. We choose to live or work in a masculine environment, but that doesn't mean we are men. Nor does it mean we are secretly soft, girly girls on the inside and we yearn to have the opportunity to put on some lipstick and wear heels. Fuck off. We are adult women who have greater concerns outside of boyfriends, children, domesticity, or fashion. We are not a minority either. I wish I had more role models like the boss to show me that I was not the exception, but the rule. There are plenty of women pursuing and thriving in supposedly masculine careers. The boss is never sexualized or belittled. No one would dare. Hell, there aren't even that many erotic depictions of the boss and fan art either, which surprises me. Somehow Hideo Kojima crafted a female character who commands the respect and admiration, not only of the characters around her, but the audience as well. She feels like someone I was missing all my life, a key aspect of my womanhood that I was missing. And then I had to shoot her in the face. Fuck! Simulacra and simulation. Simulacra. The boss's death is a classic tropey death, one in which she is fatally wounded but still looks beautiful and is conscious enough to give a meaningful parting speech to Snake. I say it is a simulacra because it seems correct to the viewer. Whenever a character is unceremoniously killed off in a story, I don't know about you, but I feel somehow cheated. It feels wrong, doesn't it? Sure, Emperor Palpatine can be thrown down a conveniently placed infinite shaft, but Darth Vader needs his final scene, mask off, to say goodbye to his son. But in reality, Vader could have simply been decapitated by Luke's lightsaber, and it would have been the end of that. But the audience wouldn't have liked it. And look at Game of Thrones, endless examples of shocking and brutal death scenes, all played for the drama they deserve. No one in Game of Thrones dies peacefully in their sleep, or simply slips in the bathtub, or something like that. That would be silly and anticlimactic. But that's what death in real life is like. When I nearly died, remember I keep going on about that, when I nearly died, I was just crossing the road after finishing work on Friday, thinking about the movie Xanadu for some reason. The man who drove over me was a complete stranger to me. I have no memory of what happened, but apparently I was just this frantic, mindless creature that refused to sit still and wanted to run off somewhere. I had to be sedated. If those had been my last moments on Earth, they would not have reflected me or my personality or my values at all. I am not normally one to panic in an emergency. It actually tends to be when I'm the most calm and focused. It would have been a completely pointless, senseless end to a very short life. It would have ended my story before it even began. The way I look at it, my near-death experience was the beginning of the story, not the end. But this is why biopics often struggle with the endings, because often a real historical figure didn't have a cinematic ending to their life. It serves no narrative function because reality doesn't operate that way. The only one I can think of that was actually decent was Gorillas in the Mist, the Sigourney Weaver movie about Diane Fossey, who cared for the gorillas. She was killed for her, I guess, political activism there, and so that has a beginning, middle, and end that follows an arc that makes sense, it's relevant. If Snake had shot the boss between the eyes, killing her instantly, or worse, leaving her flailing around, it would have been cold and brutal. We would be left unaware of how the boss really felt about Snake. I would say it would be too dark for Snake Eater, although it's perfectly fitting for MGSV. Skullface is just brutally shot in the face repeatedly. MGSV is about the hollowness of revenge, but Snake Eater is about love, family, and grief. The boss gets the opportunity to say goodbye to her adopted son in the way few parents really get to. But it's the way we would expect, or it's the way we would hope for. It feels correct in a way. As for simulation, there are a lot of fantastical elements in this block, so it was hard to choose something realistic. There are things that come close in the boss's backstory. She refers to real aspects of political history, but it's all condensed into the life of one woman. So in that respect, much like the Shagohod, I would argue that the boss is a simulacrum. Her whole character is a simulacrum that condenses vast disparate concepts into a singular figure in order to fit a narrative. So I'm going to admit defeat. There are no simulations in this block. The Piggyback Game Guide. To quote here, the fight with the boss takes place in a field of white daffodils. Wrong. Never grab the boss unless you have a clear plan of action in mind. I mean, I think that's pretty good advice just in general around the boss. If Snake hesitates before performing a throw, his grab will be countered by the boss, and he will be thrown to the floor. Shouldn't there be ground? It's outside. Whenever you hit the ground... Oh, now they say ground. After one of these attacks, you should get up again as quickly as possible and fell the boss. That's actually a typo I wrote in the book. With 2 punch-kick combos. That reminds me of Kick Puncher from Community. If the boss is lying on the ground, you can pull a weapon and fire on your dazed opponent. As a rule, though, the frontal attacks with firearms are not a very good way to fight the boss. She can parry all projectiles, even RPG rockets, with her fast-firing Patriot pistol. Yeah, okay. If you haven't mastered the CQC counter yet, you should take a more cautious approach. Don the snow face paint and uniform, then crouch in the long grass at the edge of the arena. When your camo index is 65 or above, the boss will find it difficult to spot you. Look for her with the thermal goggles or simply watch out for suspicious clouds of white petals. Fire rapid shots with your SVD at her head or heart and find a new hiding place. After your victory, there is a final conversation between Snake and the boss. The only thing you can do is press square at the designated moment. There is no alternative solution. It's not quite over yet, though. I'm surprised it doesn't say anything about the impossibility of a stamina defeat, nor does it make mention of the fact that the boss does not explode when she dies. She didn't have the same bomb implanted in her that the other Cobras did, evidently. They say the boss can be blinded for a short time by stun grenades, but this will only work on 3 occasions. After that, they will have no effect. This applies to all grenades too. You can also distract the boss with sounds, by throwing empty magazines, for example. The 3 snakes, Solid, Liquid, and Solidus, can only be found in this area. They are very tasty, but have no special purpose or deeper meaning, unless of course you're attempting to catch every plant and animal at least once. Yeah, no deeper meaning, none at all. Wig Interior. On board the plane, you have one final decision to make, left or right. Touch your chosen weapon to continue. If you choose the right one, I think they mean the one on the right, Ocelot will let you keep the weapon. This enables you to start the next game with a single action army in your backpack. Feel free to opt for the left one if you prefer, it has no bearing on the end of the game. Congratulations, you have earned the privilege of a handshake with the president. After the award of a ranking when the credits end, you will be given a number of bonus items. And this is the end of the game guide. Next episode, we will get into the bonus material. Or at least some of it. I can't get into all the spoilers. The Japanese novelization. Given that we only have 2 episodes left, I am skipping over the Shagohod and Volgan scenes in this novelization to instead focus on the boss. 494. Pain and beauty are already mixed together and ambiguous. She continued to wait in the white garden. She discovered this place, swaying in the gentle breeze by the lake, while wandering around Selenoyarsk after losing the sorrow. It was so beautiful. It felt like she had visited the end of the world. The past few days have been difficult for her. She's been told she only has a few days left to live, so she's just living each day as it comes. Still, it's an incredibly overwhelming feeling. She only has days left to live? And I don't think this is in reference to a showdown with Snake, because it's not days away, it's today. There's no way to mistranslate that. That changes things, making it slightly less tragic, actually. If the boss was terminal, which is not unlikely given her repeated radiation exposure, then her death suddenly transforms into going out the way she wanted. On her feet, fighting, sacrificing herself for the sake of others instead of withering away. 495. She continued to wait in a white garden of pain and beauty. This place, which swayed in the Japanese wind, was as beautiful as a storm. What makes the east wind... So I'm presuming they mean the east wind. What makes the east wind Japanese, specifically? It was different from a battlefield where your life could be taken in an instant. It felt like death was steadily approaching, with no way to escape. Outwardly, she seemed to have overcome her emotions, yet they still raged. She endured fear and endured sorrow. The world was incredibly colourful. The joy of life lies beyond overcoming obstacles. She pictured Snake, and then she pictured Ocelot. The image of the young, thriving Ocelot made her smile. Her Adamska had grown into a fine young man. Did she name her Adamska? Because I think she fell into a coma after she gave birth, so I don't know if it's like immediately after or during the birth, or... I mean, she said beautiful baby boy, so she knows. She knows about him, she knows what he looks like. Maybe it could be photos. She's never actually seen him, I don't know. Her beloved apprentice was coming to kill her. She tried many times to get Snake to leave this place. She failed, but ultimately fulfilled her true wish. Another plan to use Adam, who she didn't even know, would have surely destroyed something. It saved her. Okay, it's unclear if Adam and Adamska are one and the same here, given the way it's written in the book, which is Adam's capital, all capital letters. I think they're supposed to be two separate people. I don't know. She thought back on Adamska, Ocelot. He changed from the moment he met Snake. Together through their repeated battles, her sons each grew into worthy warriors. She was proud of them. It seemed all the suffering was for the sake of this joy. That was a really hard sentence to translate, but it was worth it. All that suffering was worth it for the sake of this joy. Just getting that little insight into the boss and how she felt about her boys. I wanted to know. Makes you feel a little better. A little bit. On the shore of Lake Hase. Is that lake ever named in the game? I don't know. That's what it says in the book. White, dead trees stood sparsely, their thick trunks rotting and fallen. The white flowers bloomed prolifically. A field of flowers, 6-petaled, star-shaped flowers, swayed as far as the eye could see, about knee-high. Snake walked on solid ground, weaving his way into the colony. The oak is a hardy plant with strong reproductive potential, but the ones here were quite impressive. They were tall, nearly 60 meters tall. Rumbling. Suddenly, the air behind him shook violently. The roar reverberated all the way up to his back. Turning around, he saw a large mushroom cloud rising where Groznygrad had been. It was a scene exactly like the initial nuclear explosion that blew up Sokolov's design bureau when the Virtuous mission failed. The rumble was felt, followed after a delay by a hot shock wave so powerful it seemed as if it would blow him away. Snake endured the intense mass of air. White petals were blown up all at once by the hot wind. Then they rained down like flurries of snow. Even if it was a scene created by the blast of a nuclear explosion, the flowers dancing in the sky like rain cut this lake off from reality. I like that line. 499. Apparently Snake was barely paying attention. His mind was finally beginning to recover from the shock of the boss's use of the nuclear bomb. Still, he understands that the boss is trying to tell him something important. 500. When she spoke the word family, her eyes grew gentle. She looked at Snake as a mother would look at her child. Snake had felt this same vibe throughout their 10 years together. She fully accepted him, even though he was not part of the Cobra unit. November 1st, 1951. I was in the Nevada desert, participating in atomic bomb testing. The Korean War, when they became master and disciple, was an important time for Snake. At that time, the boss was a dark hero even within the army. There were those within the army who slandered her as a communist. Another reason was that she sometimes disappeared on top-secret missions, which made her prone to misunderstandings among the soldiers. 501. Memes. Because in 1954, he too participated in a hydrogen bomb test, was exposed to radiation, and lost the ability to reproduce. If Snake were to have a family, it would be a relationship similar to that between the boss and the Cobra unit. What he could leave to the future would not be genes in line with nature, but various pieces of information not contained within them. And that's basically what I'm doing here, folks, my dear listeners. I will never have children, but you will carry on my memes. 502. We get some insight into what Snake is thinking about as the boss speaks. When she says she saw no borders between nations from space, Snake is reminded that he felt the same thing during his Halo jump that began the virtuous mission. 513. The fight sequence is very detailed, blow by blow. Hase overcomes the challenge of this being a drawn-out CQC battle despite them both having weapons power enough to kill one another instantly with one shot. Even with wounds to her side and right hand, she charged forward with incredible force. The boss's white combat suit was stained red with blood. Snake was on guard for another throw, but the boss's punch crushed his cheekbone. Snake flinched and she grabbed his right wrist, which was holding the gun. With perfect timing he learned through combat, he shook it off. He punched, he was pinned, he dodged. Amid the exchange of unspoken murderous intent, Snake felt joy. A warmth seeped from deep within his sadness at being betrayed by her and his fear of death. He was grateful that the boss existed in this world, and that he had met her. Something frozen within him was thawing. Her blood splattered everywhere from the wounds of her desperate battle. She drew her knife with terrifying precision. His blade-resistant suit was torn to shreds, and Snake was covered in blood. Knowing the knife was no match for her, he tried to move around to the outside, but she read his movement. "Is that all?" Punch! Her fist sank into Snake's left side, the wound where the suspended animation drug had been injected. He was about to vomit in pain, but the boss grabbed him by his hair and began to drag him face down. No, not the mullet! The moment he tried to support himself, his supporting leg was swept away with miraculous timing. His back was slammed into the ground, and he lost his breath for a moment. She used her weight to drive the knife into his vital spot. What was his vital spot? Snake used his strength to push back against her superhuman strength. Is she augmented in some way? Is she like the Cobras? I hope not. I hope she's just that badass. She's like One Punch Man. She's trained so much. She's just a badass by her own volition. The master and disciple tumbled across the flower garden, their knives clashing. 514. The flowers are called Umana, which correctly refers to the Star of Bethlehem flowers, unlike the game guide. 517. She had accepted Snake. They were connected. The boss had given him everything. And in truth, that connection never ended. Even after she disappeared from his sight. Snake wasn't family like the Cobra unit, but they still had a bond. She was watching over him, and yet she lay dead, covered in blood. Throughout Operation Snakehead, the boss had always been a mysterious presence. She told him that as long as we were loyal, we had nothing to trust, even those we loved. And yet Snake realized that the boss trusted him, and entrusted him with everything. Even her beloved gun was in his hands. The trust illuminated things that he couldn't see as a young novice. She was a riddle. 521. I'm disappointed that the boss's death is so downplayed. The fantastical elements are removed, the horse neighs. That is it. 522. Having been entrusted with the Patriot by the boss, Snake must now depart. He had killed his irreplaceable family with his own hands. He still couldn't bring himself to report to Fox that he had successfully assassinated the boss. It hadn't felt that way when he lost his right eye, but now it was as if half of reality had vanished. I like that line. 525. The nose of the plane rose and sunlight filtered into the cabin. He removed his backpack and web gear and set them on the floor. It was oddly comforting to see the plane's cargo space empty and devoid of any luggage. The mission, which began with a descent from the cargo bay of a special operations aircraft, now ended in a completely empty, pristine cargo bay. And there's no final battle with Ocelot. The rest sort of plays out the same, although Snake and Eva are noted to be uncomfortable in the safe house. He's not accustomed to this luxury, and she's long since turned her back on the United States. They're in Alaska. They do the deed. Snake wakes up alone, he listens to Eva's tape, but we are not told what it contains until a few pages later. Eva stole the legacy in Snake's breast pocket, but Snake hid the real legacy, somehow, in the same wound the boss inserted the fake death pill into. How? So that post-credit scene where Ocelot reveals that he was the one who stole the true legacy is not included here, and I guess isn't what actually happened in the novelization? The awards ceremony plays out exactly the same as in the game. 538, the final page of the book. I can't believe I got all the way through this. Took me years. Big Boss is standing at the boss's grave, which is where the Peace Walker novelization will pick up from next season. He had no other choice and chose her. She alone was pure in his love. She loved him with all her heart. He killed her, and all he was left with was an empty medal and a name that was both honor and disgrace. Big Boss. An emotion he could not name binds him, and so Snake sets out to fight his own battle. Operation Snake Eater is over. Tears finally fall from Snake's eye. The joy is gone.